So Starbucks buys coffee from a variety of suppliers, including individual farmers, farmers through cooperatives, and through exporters. Starbucks wants to make sure that the farmer receives a fair and profitable share of the purchase price so that they can sustain their business. This is why we started putting economic accountability into coffee contracts that we use. This requires suppliers to provide credible evidence using the form of receipts that show how much each group in the coffee supply chain has been paid. Since 2001, Starbucks has been asking suppliers to provide documentation on the disbursement of the price that we pay through the supply chain to the farmer level. So farmers know how much we're purchasing from their buyers, and we know how much is going to the coffee farmers themselves. Since 2006, we have an economic transparency requirements that 98% of our coffees purchased to provide information on the payments to the farmers. And 95% of that has economic transparency down to the farmer level. So we know all the way down to the farmer level how much that those individual farmers are getting. Social responsibility is a scored component in our cafe practices. This looks at hiring practices and worker conditions. Cafe practices, for those of you who may not know, is coffee and farmer equity practices. For example, under hiring practices, verifiers look at wages paid, freedom of association, vacation, sick time, labor, discrimination. Workers' conditions look at access to housing, education, medical care, training, health, and safety. Social responsibility includes social development, projects such as access to credit, and we'll find out in a moment why that's really important. Social development, Starbucks works with coffee farmers, cooperatives, mills, exporters, and their communities to build schools, art clinics, coffee mills, and other projects that benefit coffee growing communities. Funding from a variety of sources awards money to farmers, partnership with non-governmental organizations such as Conservation International, African Wildlife Foundation, and Mercy Corps. So access to credit, coffee farmers often face a shortage of cash, just as you had seen in the movie, before they harvest, which forces them to sell their crops, and which forces them to sell their crops to local buyers at prices lower than they would receive otherwise. Starbucks provides loan guarantees through the NGOs, allowing thousands of farmers to have access to affordable credit and helping them through cash shortages during crop cycles. One of the other things that happens in addition to selling it too soon is when the market price is down, they're forced to sell. They have no money left. What other choice do they have? So sometimes they sell it lower than the fair trade price outside of their own co-op because they need the cash. Or what they'll do is when prices are good and higher than what the fair trade market is offering, which is the case now, they'll go outside of their co-op and they'll sell it to what we call coyotes, which are like wholesalers that will pay above fair trade. Right? They'll pay above the fair trade price, but it may not be a premium price. So they'll go ahead and sell it outside of fair trade, which prevents it from going to the fair trade coffee. Through 2006, Starbucks is committed to dispersing almost $10 million, $9.5 million in funding to these nonprofit organizations, providing loans to these farmers. We provided $1 million to the Calvert Foundation, $2.5 million to Verda Ventures Fund, and $6 million to Ecologic Finance. Any quotes that I give you today, and when you think about statistics, statistic is just that. It's a statistic unless it's put into perspective. So any quotes or information that I give you today, I've put in writing. In the spirit of being green, I made a very limited number of copies. So if you would like that information, if you can reach out, can I say it to you, Phil?
Well, sure. We get more copies for us.
Okay, or more copies. Or I'll also leave a couple of business cards and leave myself open for questions or access to information that you may want to use moving forward. So I want to keep it the information flowing as much as possible. So providing access to credit during the growing and harvest cycles, and I'm not sure if you're aware of coffee, they have the harvest twice a year. Farmers also often struggle with cash flow. This shortage of funds can lead to them to sell their crops earlier and be charged with high interest rates and receive lower prices. This inevitably cuts into the farmers' profits and sets up a similar scenario for next year. It's just like welfare in the United States, right? If they continue to do it without being helped to be educated or to taught how to do a skill or a trade, it's going to perpetuate the cycle, and that's exactly the situation farmers find themselves in. Starbucks works with several social investment organizations to make loans available for these growers, and I broke those out in the last slide. So environmental leadership is a scored component of our cafe practices, demonstrated through the efforts to protect and conserve water, soil resources, biological diversity, and overall ecosystem functions, which includes proper farm planning and management. Certified and conservation coffee. Starbucks offers fair trade certified and certified organic and conservation shade-grown coffees. These coffees have been certified and verified by third-party independent parties and grown and sold in ways that help preserve the natural environment. Certified organic coffee is grown without the use of synthetic pesticides, as I'm sure all of you know, herbicides and chemical fertilizers, and help maintain soil and groundwater, healthy soil and groundwater. Conservation's shade-grown coffee protects biodiversity in ecologically sensitive coffee growing regions. I won't give you all the statistics on the numbers that we purchase, but they're very large. So, fair trade coffee. Starbucks continues to support fair trade movement, reinforcing our position as the largest fair trade certified purchaser in North America, with purchases of more than 18 million pounds last year. So what does that mean? That's about 30% of all fair trade that comes into the United States and 14% of all global fair trade coffee. Just to put that statistic into perspective, as much as you hear and see Starbucks as a backdrop for political and social change, Starbucks purchases less than 2% of the world's coffee supply. So you saw 4 of the big coffee suppliers that were on the Black Gold movie. None of them were Starbucks. You saw our name at the end because we were one that was asked to participate, but because we have that brand recognition and because they know that we continue to make these efforts in these third world countries, and they want us to continue to do that. We do too. We want to do it too. We need your help, and we'll find ways that we can do that. But keep that in perspective for what we're giving and what we're purchasing of fair trade, shade grown, and what we're contributing to these third world countries in terms of their economic and social benefits. We're less than 2% of the coffee that the world purchases. So in fiscal 2000, so the fair trade that we purchased last year, the 18 million pounds, represents 6% of total purchases of fair trade coffee. In fiscal 2006, Starbucks paid $1.6 million in licensing fees to various fair trade organizations, with the majority of it paid to Transfair USA, which is the label that you see on fair trade coffee in the United States. There are 28 labels. Okay, so majority of the fees are, support various fair trade activities to help the market and product and fund certification products. So why not all fair trade coffee? Here's the million-dollar question. The fair trade system certifies only cooperatives and small-scale family-owned farms, for which includes about 3% of the coffee farmers. So 3% of the world's coffee farmers are only ones that qualify for fair trade coffee to be sold. Okay, that can change. Because of the size and the growth rate of Starbucks, we need to be able to purchase from larger coffee farms. So, for example, a small farm, as they've indicated here, that goes into a co-op for fair trade is 5 hectares. So 5 hectares, depending on who you ask, could be 3 acres or 8 acres, but nevertheless, it's under 10 acres of a farm. So there are many farmers out there who have between 10 acres and 50 acres, but aren't considered large farms for these large coffee companies such as Kraft and Sara Lee and yada yada. That's an opportunity for us to take advantage and to go and to meet these coffee farmers and help to educate them, if they don't already grow high quality coffee that we can purchase, to build a relationship, to pay a higher price, to sign a license with them, sometimes 3 to 5 years before we even purchase their coffee, so that they can become sustainable and grow the quality coffee that we can purchase. This is what we do with the farmers that are not able to qualify for fair trade.